Welcome back to Property Auction Hunters, and today we are down to 3. That's right, there's only 3 of us here today, so that means you get more Piotr, more Saif, and sadly for everyone here, you get more Jay. We don't have Omar. He will be back. We haven't buried him in his own development site somewhere in Kent. He's knocking about, don't you worry. We have had some great responses from the last couple of videos, especially the one that I had put forward, HMO no, or HMO no, whichever way round we did it. Anyway, quite a few people have said that they were looking at that. It was something they were paying attention to. In fact, they were providing some information that we didn't even know about the site. So it just goes to show there are people out there doing some really good due diligence. Now, some people have been messaging us directly, suggesting lots for us to review and to share. But guys, you're requesting them so close to the auction and so close to when we record, it doesn't fit in. So the moment you see something interesting, you think it would be great to get our view on it, make sure you DM one of us, and we put it into got a little WhatsApp group with the 4 of us, and we share these ideas and we talk about what we're going to go through. So without too much further ado, today is Piotr's choice. So Piotr is going from telephone boxes in Brighton to, and drum roll, what do you got, Piotr?
Okay. This time I've got something very different. It will fit more than 2 people into this. It's actually a property that's got 40 letting rooms. Let me share this with you. So this property is a freehold block providing 40 letting rooms, guided at £600,000 plus, with gross initial yield of 17%. And that 17% is based on 18 letting rooms subject to ASTs and 22 vacant rooms. So basically less than half of the property is rented out and it's providing 102,000, and basically 22 rooms are vacant that can provide way more income. The property is an ex-nursing home, and this ex-nursing home was converted into 4 10-bedroom HMOs in about 6 or 7 years ago. And this property is being sold as part of this Home REIT sell-off in order to raise the money to basically cover all the losses that Home REIT had in the last few years. So basically, I don't know how many of you have heard about Home REIT and how well they did, but it was quite extensively covered in the media about Home REIT buying a lot of big properties, and basically those properties being then tenanted with community interest companies that would then rent out those individual rooms or individual flats to people in need. And they would give like 20-year leases, those community companies would take 20-year leases on those properties, and they would pay 7% yield to Home REIT. And basically Home REIT have made massive losses by the fact that those companies stopped paying rents, and basically turned out that Home REIT was overpaying for a lot of assets because they were paying the price based on the rental that was provided, but the rental wasn't really very real, and Home REIT made losses. So now all of those properties flooding the market, and basically most of them are in this also auction, and this is one of them. So guys, I know you've heard much more about Home REIT. Do you want to share anything about this property right now to start with, before we get into the juice?
Yeah, I mean, I knew about Home REIT probably about a year and a half ago, and the way I knew about it was there was a lot of what we call aggregators in the market. So aggregators are people that basically get all of the properties from developers, investors, etc., who are looking to trade them on to someone like Home REIT. They aggregate the stock because obviously Home REIT can only buy them in certain amounts, so they have a minimum value they'll pay for stuff. So they can't buy them in ones and twos; they need to buy them in big portfolios. So the aggregator was aggregating at 8% yield and then selling it to Home REIT at 5 and 6% yield. So they were making huge margins. And that's when I thought, okay, well, this whole model just doesn't make sense. And then obviously it transpired that there's a lot of aggregators and investors that have made a lot of money from the whole situation. But obviously, as you get with a lot of these funds, there's loads and loads of obviously fees involved. And at the end of the day, they just don't make the right investment decisions because they're just people that are making the investment decisions have got a job there, right? So yeah, it was a whole shambles that happened. But I do think they have some good quality stock in their portfolio. As long as you can get it for the right money, which it looks like some of this stuff is starting to come to market at the right money, I think you can repurpose it. And ultimately, just remember, these guys are not in a position to be able to maximize the asset. So you can pick something up and maximize it and increase the value. So yeah, I think it's worthwhile looking at Home REIT stock.
Comparatively, I know very little, at least the inner working stuff. I mean, we had heads up from auctioneers and from asset managers that I talk to on a regular basis that there was a flood of this type of stock coming in. No one really wants to take responsibility for it. The asset managers have changed. It's been battered around receivers and things like that. No one really wants to pick it up. So it's kind of hanging in limbo, and there's a management team trying to undo all of the issues that have kind of plagued the entire REIT. And by the end of this call, we're going to find out whether it was Home REIT or Home Wrong. We're going to make sure if this was, everyone likes that. It's a good quality dad joke, nice and early on. What I will say is I was talking to somebody recently who said that they've got a whole bunch of HMOs, decent sized ones, the sui generis type, the 8, 12, 15 bed stuff. And they posed a question on one of the Facebook groups saying, I have all these HMOs, could I repurpose them for social housing, get CICs involved, RPs, care providers, all that kind of stuff, which a lot of that goes over my head. It's not something that we focus on. And I said to him, look, just so you know, there is all of this noise that's come out. There is now a magnifying lens over that entire part of the industry. And if you went back 3 or 4 years, people were paying multipliers on income because the leases were up to 40 years in some cases, and there was indexation that took into place, and all of those different types of things. Those investment metrics are no longer there. So if you're looking at this with fresh eyes in the current market, do not look back at how these type of assets were performing in 2019, 2020, and 2021. Because if you're looking to build a big portfolio to kind of maybe sell out to a bigger REIT or institutional funders or something like that, you're not getting the same return. So, and if you are going to do it, for the love of anything but money, make sure that you're doing it because you actually care about the social impact that you're making with these community infrastructure kind of things. So that's my 2 pence on it.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's look into details on this property. So this property is a 40-room HMO. Actually, it's 4 10-bedrooms HMOs. And the good thing with this property, comparing to the ones that we discussed in Northwest London, is that this one has got proper planning permission. So it was converted in about 2016. It looks like all proper permissions are in place. And in terms of income, when we looked at it, the income is about £500 a room, and it's Swadling Court in Derbyshire. It's not the most, it's not the biggest town in the UK, and I think to fill 40 rooms in a town like this might be a bit of a challenge. That's definitely one of the kind of concerns that I would have. Another thing is probably in this town you can rent out a house for about £600-700. I haven't checked exact figures, but I would say those wouldn't be far from the reality. But if you're looking at renting a HMO room at £500 a month, the actual discrepancy between renting a house and renting a room isn't quite big. So I would be concerned about getting £500 a month per room in this property, especially that the rooms aren't that big. They're about 12 to maybe 15 square meters. So those are my concerns. However, on balance, I think this property is phenomenal for someone who's already got a portfolio of HMOs, maybe already managing things in this area. And even though a lot of documents are missing, there isn't really access to the property. I think this property is a brilliant kind of cash flowing property for someone who's already got a portfolio in this area. And I think this is the kind of person that's going to be buying this potentially. Those are my thoughts.
Okay, so you might have seen that I've been looking away while you were doing all that. I'll be honest with you, we don't normally get all of this information, so we kind of also are on the back foot when we're reviewing these. So we are actually reviewing a lot of this stuff live with you guys while you're watching. We're also thinking, doing due diligence, because I think that's the whole point. Is we're not supposed to come here equipped with everything. We need to show you how we kind of think on the spot, right? So the first thing I did was, and I know we don't normally do this, but I kind of just wanted to look at what the special conditions said, right? So if you look at the special conditions, the first thing they put on there is that basically they will sell it. And it's obviously subject to ASTs, but they don't have any sight of those ASTs. So effectively, you're buying this property with tenants in situ, but there's going to be no ASTs produced, which tells me that you're going to have an absolute nightmare if you actually do have people in the property and you're going to be trying to get them out. So that's the first thing. Is I would be trying to turn up to site, knocking on the doors, trying to figure out who still lives in there, who doesn't. And the people that still live in there, are they amenable to potentially leaving if you pay them a sum of money, if you help them with a deposit to a new property, whatever it is? The interesting thing is there's multiple tenants involved here. And funny enough, one of the tenants that I realised on here was Farrington Properties Limited. And I don't know if anyone knows, but there's Claire Farrington Brown. It's quite popular on Facebook. Everyone knows her. It's actually one of her companies. So she's actually put a lease on this property as well, on part of the property, not on all of it. And I know she operates in that area. So first thing I'll be doing is trying to contact her on Facebook or messaging her or whatever and try to ask her what's going on with this. That's what I would be doing. But I don't think anything in terms of the CIC and stuff is related to her because there's multiple people. And then you've got other CICs involved. So you've got one CIC involved, and then there's I think one or two others as well. So basically, it's quite complex. There's a lot of pitfalls here. But the first thing I would do would be to start with the person that you know and ask them. And I'm pretty sure, I think she does management in that area. So I think she's managing some of the rooms by the looks of it. And then you've got a CIC that's taken over some of the other rooms. So if you can dig up the ASTs by contacting her management company or the management company of Farrington Properties Limited and understand that there actually are ASTs in place, but obviously, you know, the vendors here are obviously not wanting to put all the time and effort into doing that, so they've just stated that they're not going to get the ASTs. That's the first point of call. The second thing to bear in mind on the special conditions is that it's subject to them exiting the leases as well. So any leases in place, and I don't think that means ASTs. I think that means the actual lease with the head, what we call the head tenant. So they need to exit that. So even if they've exited that, there might still be a tenant in situ without an AST. So that's where the pitfalls are for me.
Yeah, so this is definitely subject to terminating the top lease. And the structure of this investment was that there was a top lease, and then that top lease company, the CIC, was issuing ASTs to individual tenants. And basically what happens now is you would be buying the property subject to all of those ASTs, but without the middle company, the CIC company.
Correct. So I know the area well. We've just literally completed our property in that area, Swadden Coat, and put it up into auction. So I kind of know the area well. I don't think it's a great area personally for HMOs as such. I feel like, especially such a large HMO, it's going to need a hell of a lot of operation. So unless you're on the ground, you have a management company or something like that, then I would personally be staying away from this. I do think there is a potential that you could try and, you know, actually look for proper care companies, proper, you know, what we call care, not necessarily the care homes, but the smaller care homes, and maybe divide the building up because it's already kind of in 4 different parts and lease each individual part out. But I would be trying to line up an exit on this before I even get into it. It's a big old lump, and it's just a hell of a lot of risk to take on, basically, without an exit clearly in mind.
Okay, what do you think?
I have to say I quite like buildings like this. I I think the way it's laid out at the moment as HMOs, the area is probably inefficient. I think both of you in your own ways have said that. I would like to see if there's like a reconfiguration that can be done to turn them into, vertically, to turn them into houses. Maybe You'll get a better rate on the houses. You'll get, even if you wanted to cut them up and sell them off piecemeal as houses, I don't think you'd get the right kind of return based on the guide price if you to cut them into for HMOs and sell them as HMO blocks. I don't think that would work. I don't know the area well enough, but I will say there are quite a few issues with this. The lack of access is always an issue with HMOs, especially these large ones. The main concern people are going to have is what is the internal condition, because you always get that, you could call it paranoia, but you always get that flashpoint in your mind where, like, even if there are some internal images of the property that's on the marketing, you know it's not all of the rooms. So you start telling yourself maybe they only took pictures of the one or two that are nice, right? And then your mind starts to escalate. Well, if I'm buying this for 600,000 or 900, even if you bought it on a 10% yield on the, even though it's half vacant, whatever, I would still be concerned that £15,000 a room to refurb for HMO, including doing the internals and tidying up the outside, probably isn't unreasonable. And if you did get the whole thing entirely let, you have the issue that Piotr's raised, which is £500 for a 15 square metre HMO room, or £600 for a 3-bedroom terraced house in the area. That's the kind of level that you're talking about here. I think they've probably guided it well, taken into consideration the risks. The biggest thing is, not having the access, not having sight of all of the tenancies, and not knowing if all of the procedural compliance stuff with onboarding those tenancies, you don't have that information.
Sorry to interrupt, but I just had a look. Actually, they do have, even though it says that in the specials, they do have the tenancies in the legal pack. So, to be honest with you, the tenancy agreements are there. And it also states they paid £1.9 million for it in 2022, just as an FYI.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it. I think it's easy to kind of buy these kind of things if you're entering the building, you're onboarding everything yourself, you have that catalogue of information, in your own back end, that you can say, right, this person was given the right to rent check, they were given the EPC, the boiler certificate, they were given all of those things. For an incoming investor, they're not going to knock 50% of the value off for not having that, but they're going to appraise a risk of how long am I going to have a potentially non-paying or a potentially 20 non-paying tenants, because then it becomes a stackable issue where actually one or two tenants not paying, you can cover that. If you're buying it at 600 or 800 and it's producing £100,000+, very easily covered. But if 50% of those or 100% of those decide not to pay, that becomes severely problematic. Then you probably find yourself in a similar situation that Home REIT is in, even though you're likely not to be a REIT that's buying this. I don't know what I think will happen with this one, but I'd be interesting to hear Piotr's thoughts first. Let's see what Piotr has to say. It's his pick.
I don't go first, Jay. We know that. I've got too many right picks for you to copy me. But this property also, interesting enough, it had planning permission before it was converted into HMOs, and it had planning permission for, I believe, 16 flats, some of them 1 bed, some of them 2 bed. And I don't think it was economical to convert this into flats. And that's why I was converted into an HMO with a new planning permission. The property prices in this area are not great. Houses go for anything between 100 and 150k, and I think someone would struggle to make money from it after having to convert this. So I think this will sell. It sold for 1.9 million in the past to Home REIT. I think they massively overpaid for the property because of all the people in the middle. And I also think this property's got really good value. It will be purchased by someone who's very experienced and who can handle those issues, and they don't feel overwhelmed by the enormity of this purchase. And I think this property will sell for 850,000.
Wow, spot on. I think this is the type of property that if I was Farringdon Properties Limited, I would be looking to pick up personally, because they currently manage it, and I don't know. I need to double check. I think they managed part of it before it was bought by Home REIT, so it looks like maybe parts of it were already managed, parts of it were leased out. So that's kind of what it looked like to me. As I said, I didn't go through every single AST. There's a lot to go through there. But I know that they buy large HMOs. I know they buy HMOs in this area, and I think they'll be very, very well placed to be buying something like this, personally. I do think, despite everything that I said in terms of the risk, I do still think there's still a market for this, because I think from an income producing perspective, it could still be huge, right? And I personally think this will sell for probably just under $1 million. I think maybe about 900, maybe 925,000, around that figure. I don't think we'll get to $1 million. I think that's quite steep. But I think even with the income coming in at the minute of 100 and something thousand, I think even someone to pick it up at 11, 12% yield with a potential to optimize that, maybe 150, 170,000 income, is still a huge opportunity for someone. So that's me.
Okay, good. I think we all think it's going to
825,000 or 875. What do you pick?
It's one of them, right? No, I think it's going to sell, and I think Saif's point about the Farringdon family or sisters, I think it's the sisters that mainly run it. I think they're probably going to be better positioned than anybody, because if they're managing some of the lets, they've probably spoken to the neighbours. They're probably in there. You're probably right. They probably looked at this and might even be going for it. So, and if they are, good luck to them. I think it will sell, but I'm not entirely sure by how much. I don't think it will hit the £1 million mark, so I'm not as bolshy as Saif. I think Piotr's picked a really good middle ground. Can I go for 849,950? No, I think 795.
We're not pricing cars here, just to let you know, Jay.
795.
The Ford Fiesta.
I mean, it's an all-stop auction, so it's going to be the little bidding widget, isn't it? So it's probably going to be going up in 5,000s to start, and then rolling down to 2s, and probably settles at 1. So I don't think it will get 800, is what I'm saying. At 795, I'm saying I don't think it will reach 8. That's the yeah. But so
bold statement, Jay. Bold statement.
Bold statement. But the thing is, we all think, despite its risks, it's going to sell, and for the right person, it's a deal. That's what we're all saying, right?
Definitely.
We are saying
100%.
that, yes.
I think 600,000 guide price is very well priced. I think it's attractive enough for people to start looking at it, especially on an income basis. I appreciate it's quite a microclimate in its own right. It's not very well known by everyone. But I still think large institutions might potentially look at something like this, even though there's a risk attached to it. And as I said, larger management companies would look at it as well. So yeah, I definitely think it will sell, personally.
Okay, brilliant, guys. That's been a very informative chat, and let's see how this property is going to perform. We'll be back with our review of the results in a couple of weeks, and you'll be able to see who was right, who's wrong, how far away from the truth Jay was, and how close was I.
And here's a new game. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, I want you to do one thing for us. I want you to comment, where is Omar? Or we love Omar. What are we going for? Where is he, or
can we
get
hashtag
him?
where is Omar trending, please?
Yes. Yeah, hashtag where is Omar?
Where's Wally? But no, where's
so
Omar?
whoever makes it to the end. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, that'll be a good game. That'll be a good game.
Okay, guys, we'll chat to you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers, guys.